Some of the easiest plants to start with if you want to start propagating plants, and just some tips and tricks for each. Pothos is by far the easiest plant to start propagating with. I actually started propagating pothos when I was in my 20s. I worked in an office building, and in the lobby there were these tall, like palmy kind of plants, and then along the base of the pot they had filled it in with golden pothos. One day I was hanging out there, and the woman who came once a week to take care of the plants was cutting a lot of the pothos back. Like, she cut them every week just to keep them so they were not draping too far out of the pot. And I started talking to her, asking her what she was doing, how she liked her job, because I was interested in plants but didn't know much about them. And I loved talking to her, and she said, "Do you want these? If you put them in water, they'll grow roots." I had no idea, never heard of such a thing. I grew them in a styrofoam cup in my cubicle with just overhead like fluorescent lights, and they did great, and that's how I got obsessed with propagation. Anyways, pothos are so easy to root in water. They really need very little care. You just need to make sure that they don't run out of water. You want to have at least 4 to 6 leaf nodes on your cutting, and remove all but the last leaf. So you just have one leaf when you put them in the water. And put the cut end in water. You can propagate them in soil, but I recommend doing it in water so you can monitor the growth. And put them in bright and direct light. You want to change the water every few days so it doesn't get gunky and gross. If you're doing them in soil, just keep the soil moist. I suggest covering with a plastic bag to create a little greenhouse. And once roots are 2 to 3 inches long, you can put them in soil. Pothos can actually grow in water forever. You might want to add a little liquid fertilizer in there monthly so that it can get all the nutrients that it needs, but they can live in water forever. Spider plants are another super easy plant to propagate. They grow little babies on the end of branches. You can cut these off and stick them right into soil, and they will root. I have tried to root these in water, and they tend to rot for me. So I do suggest with spider plants that you root them in soil with a little rooting hormone, and just keep them moist. I like to cover to create a little greenhouse until they start rooting, and put them in bright light. They root really quickly. Snake plant is a super hardy plant. I have plants that get really tall and they have a tendency to start flopping over, so that's when I propagate them. I cut a V shape when I cut the leaf off, and you want 4 to 6 inches or so of leaf. You dip it into rooting hormone, and then you can place it in either water or directly in soil. Just remember to keep it moist if it is in soil, and you want to put it in a warm, bright area. Change the water regularly, and you will get roots, but it can take a little while for these to root. And one nice thing, if you root them in soil, is they'll just root in place and can fill out your pot really nicely. Succulents, I mean, there's a lot of different kinds of succulents, but most succulents will root from a leaf, and some succulents actually put out little pups, little babies, like the mother of thousand does. You can just pop a leaf off and set it in soil. You might want to let it callus for a few days. That just means to let the part where you broke it off dry off before you water it. I have mixed thoughts on letting it callus off. It cannot hurt, but I also have not had a lot of issues when I don't let it callus off. It seems to work well either way. Just make sure it's really well draining soil. They don't like to stay wet. They will rot and get mushy. You can mist them to help encourage root growth, and you definitely use rooting hormone. And then water sparingly once they start to root, because they still are succulents. And just remember, when you're propagating your plants, to keep the soil moist, but not like soupy, not too wet while they're rooting. You want to make sure they have bright and direct light for most plants. And remember, rooting takes time. You do have to be patient and try not to mess with them too much. Just let them do their natural thing. And then once you're ready to transition them into like a full-grown plant, just transition them gradually, especially if it's a major change in temperature or light conditions. Then just try and move them gradually so you don't put them into shock.